I'm Daniel, 15 years old, and this happened 2 years ago. It was just after 6 p.m. at the Greyhound bus stop on Route 17, the one with the cracked concrete bench and the flickering soda machine that never worked. There were 7 people there, for adults to teenagers, one little kid holding a red plastic dinosaur with one missing leg. Rain was coming down sideways, hard enough that it felt like gravel on my face. My hoodie was soaked through. My shoes made a squelching sound every time I shifted my weight. My parents were standing 3 feet in front of me. My sister was next to them, dry under an umbrella, scrolling on her phone like this was a normal Tuesday. My dad looked at me and said, "You made your choice. Deal with it." My mom didn't look at me at all. She just said, "The bus will be here in 10 minutes. I remember the little kid tugging on his mom's sleeve and whispering, not quietly enough, "Why is that boy crying?" I wasn't crying yet. My face just felt tight, like everything inside me had locked up at once. My hands were shaking so bad I shoved them into my pockets, but that didn't help. The wind pushed rain under the shelter roof. My sister laughed. Actually laughed. She said, "Stop staring at us like that. You're embarrassing." Then my dad turned away. That was the moment it really landed. They were leaving. Not sending me somewhere, not bluffing, leaving me in a storm. At a bus stop, with no bag, no phone charger, no plan, everyone laughed, except one person. And what he did next changed everything. To understand how it reached that moment, I need to go back. The first scene. That really explains it happened when I was 12. It was the start of winter, and my sister and I both needed new clothes. There was a mall 20 minutes away, the kind with fake plants and a pretzel stand that smelled burned. My sister got taken to Nordstrom. I remember the exact dress because it was hanging in the hallway for weeks after. A pale blue thing with tiny buttons down the back. The tag said $500. My mom kept telling everyone, "It's an investment. She has events." I got taken to Target. We stood in the boys section under fluorescent lights that buzzed. My mom picked up a hoodie, gray plain, already pilling a little. She checked the price and said, $63 is already pushing it. I tried to joke. I said, "Guess I'll grow into it." She didn't laugh. She said, "Don't be ungrateful." My sister texted us pictures from a fitting room mirror. Different angles, different poses. My dad replied with heart emojis. When we got home, her dress went into a garment bag. My hoodie went on my bed, still folded from the store. That night, I heard my parents in the kitchen. My dad said, "She just has more potential." My mom said, "Daniel will be fine. He always is." The second scene was a year later. My sister's birthday party. She turned 16. There were balloons, a rented backdrop, a custom cake with her name spelled in gold icing. 23 guests. I counted because I was setting out chairs. My job was to refill drinks and take trash out back. At one point, I knocked over a cup by accident. Soda spilled on the patio. My sister snapped, "God, you ruin everything." My dad pulled me aside, gripped my shoulder too tight, and said, "Today is not about you." Later that night, gifts were opened. A new phone, a bracelet from a brand I'd only seen in ads, an envelope with car keys inside. I got a card. Inside was $20 and a note that said, "Save this." When everyone left, my sister accused me of stealing one of her bracelets. She said she'd seen it on my desk before. I hadn't. I swear I hadn't. My parents didn't ask questions. My dad said, "Give it back." My mom said, "Why would she lie?" They grounded me for 2 weeks anyway. No apology when the bracelet turned up in my sister's gym bag. The third scene was the lie that mattered. It happened the week of my aunt's wedding. Big deal family event. Everyone was stressed. My sister was a bridesmaid. I was supposed to help with setup and watch my cousin during the ceremony. The night before, my sister told my parents I'd taken money from her room. She said it was $300. She said she needed it for wedding expenses. She said she'd asked me directly, and I'd smirked. None of that happened. My parents didn't look at me when she said it. My mom just sighed and said, "I can't do this again." My dad said, "You're not coming to the wedding." I tried to defend myself. My voice cracked. That made it worse. My sister stood there, arms crossed, calm. She said, "I just want the truth." The money was later found in her makeup bag. My parents said nothing. No apology. Just, let's move on. But something shifted after that. I felt it, like I was already halfway gone. The build-up to the bus stop started with a text. It was from my mom. "A week after the wedding, we need to talk. Family dinner. Sunday, be respectful." No smiley face, no explanation. At dinner, my parents sat close together. My sister sat between them. I was across the table near the corner, next to a stack of unopened mail. My dad said, "We're worried about your behavior." I asked, "What behavior?" My mom said, "Your attitude, the tension you create." My sister added, "I don't feel safe around him sometimes." That sentence hung in the air. I remember the clock on the wall ticking. 1, 2, 3. I said, "What does that mean?" She shrugged. "You know, I didn't. They told me I needed space, time to reflect." My dad said, "Sometimes consequences help people grow." I thought it meant grounding, or staying with my uncle for a few days. On Friday, my mom told me to pack a bag. She said, "Just essentials." I packed clothes, my toothbrush, a book. No one told me where I was going. In the car, my sister was unusually quiet. She kept checking her phone. Halfway there, I realized we weren't heading toward any relative's house. I said, "Where are we going?" My dad said, "You'll see." Something felt off. I ignored it. We pulled into the bus station lot just as the rain started. I said, "What is this?" My mom said, "We arranged a ticket." I asked, "To where?" My dad said, "Your uncle's city. He agreed to take you." That was a lie. I found out later. I said, "Can we talk about this?" My sister said, "Stop making a scene." I almost got back in the car when my dad handed me a printed ticket. One-way departure time circled in pen. I thought they'd wait, that this was a scare tactic. Then my dad said the line, "You made your choice, deal with it." That's when he turned away. After they left, I stood there shaking. People stared. Some whispered. Someone snorted a laugh. The little kid with the dinosaur watched me like I was a movie. And then the man stepped forward. He was older, maybe late 40s. He wore a dark jacket and had rain on his eyelashes. He looked at the empty space where my parents had been. He said calmly, "You okay, son?" I couldn't answer. He took off his jacket and put it around my shoulders. He told the kid gently, "Hey, buddy, give him some space." Then he said something into his phone, quiet, controlled. That was the first time someone chose me. The humiliation didn't end there. When my parents came back 5 minutes later, they were angry. My mom said, "What did you tell people?" My dad said, "You're making us look bad." My sister said, "See? This is what I mean." They said it was a joke, a lesson, that it was too sensitive. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just stood there while the man stayed between us. We left together. Not with them. With him, 3 days later. I saw the messages, screenshots, dates. My sister texting her friend, "Watch this." Another, "They'll believe me." I typed 2 words. No contact. 6 months passed. Life became quieter. I stayed with the man who saved me. Therapy, once a week. A small room with a blue couch. My job at the hardware store got steadier. I learned how to breathe again. My parents tried to reach out. I didn't answer. Now, when I think back to that bus stop, I don't remember the rain as much as I remember the silence after the door closed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. 6 months passed. Life became quieter. Not immediately. At first it was quiet in the way a room feels after someone slams a door. The noise is gone, but your ears are still ringing. I woke up most nights thinking I'd missed the bus, or that my dad was standing over me, telling me to get up and explain myself better this time. The man who took me in was named Mark. I didn't call him anything at first. Not Dad, not Uncle, just Mark. He didn't push it. His house was small. 2 bedrooms, beige carpet worn thin near the couch. A kitchen table with one leg shorter than the others, so it always wobbled unless you folded a napkin and shoved it underneath. He cleared out the spare room the night I arrived. I slept on a mattress on the floor for the first week, the first morning. He knocked once, softly, then opened the door just enough to say, "There's cereal if you want, or eggs. No rush." No rush. That phrase felt unreal. I didn't talk much. Those first days. I answered questions with nods or shrugs. Mark didn't fill the silence. He just let it sit there, like it wasn't something dangerous. 3 days after the bus stop, I checked my old phone. I hadn't turned it on since that. Night notifications stacked up, missed calls from my mom, a voicemail from my dad that I didn't open. What I opened instead were the screenshots Mark had helped me pull from my sister's old tablet. She'd left it logged into her messages months earlier. I'd never touched it. Didn't think I was allowed to. That night, Mark had said, "If there's truth, it's better to see it clearly." There were dates, times, names. July 14th, 8:42 p.m. Her, I swear if I say he took it, they won't even question it. Friend, that's messed up. Her, relax. He always lands on his feet. July 20th, 5:11 p.m., her family dinner. Sunday, this is gonna fix everything. Friend, fix how? Her watch. July 27th, 6:02 p.m., her. They're finally doing something about him. I didn't feel angry when I read them. That surprised me. I felt hollow, like the space where something important had been finally collapsed in on itself. I handed the phone to Mark. He read without comment. Then he handed it back and said, "I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you. Not families are complicated. Not they meant well." Just that dot 3 days later, I typed 2 words to my parents in a single text. No contact. They didn't respect it. The first time they showed up was 2 weeks later. A Saturday morning, I was sitting at the table, trying to focus on a math worksheet. Mark had printed for me. There was a knock at the door. Not loud, confident. Mark looked through the peephole and sighed once. "Stay here." I spelled heavyway. My legs felt heavy, like they didn't want to remember how to work. My mom's voice came through the door. "Daniel, we just want to talk." Mark didn't open it. He said, calm and steady, he asked for space. My dad said, "We're his parents." Mark said, "Right now, you're guests, and you're not invited." My mom switched tactics. "Fast. We're worried about him. He's confused." Mark glanced back at me. I shook my head once. He said, "He's clear." There was a pause. Then my sister spoke. "I hadn't realized she was there," she said. "This is ridiculous." He's being dramatic. Something in me snapped, but not outward. It snapped inward, like a final thread giving up. Mark said, "You need to leave." My dad said, "You think you know better than us?" Mark said, "I know what I saw." Silence. Then the sound of a car door. Mark locked the door. He didn't look at me right away. When he did, his hands were shaking. He said, "You okay?" I nodded. Then, after a second, I said, "Thank you." That was the first boundary. The next week, Wednesdays at 4 p.m., the therapist's office smelled like mint tea and old books. She had a soft lamp instead of overhead lights. She didn't take notes the first session. She just listened. One day she asked me, "When did you learn that telling the truth didn't help?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I don't remember a time when it did." She nodded like that made sense. School was strange. Transferred districts quietly. No announcement, no explanation. Mark told the office there were family issues. That was it. I sat in the back of most classes, kept my head down. A kid named Leo offered me a pencil once when mine broke. That was the extent of my social life for a while. At work, things were simpler. I stocked shelves at the hardware store 3 evenings a week. Nails, paint cans, bags of soil. The manager trusted me with the register after a month. When I messed up change once, he said, "It happens. Fix it and move on." No one accused me of intent. My parents tried again after a month. Emails this time, long ones, carefully written. "We're hurt. You won't talk to us. We did what we thought was best. You're letting one incident define us." I didn't reply the second time they showed up in person. Mark wasn't home. It was late afternoon. I was doing dishes. I heard the knock and froze. My mom said my name through the door. Soft, familiar, the way she used to sound. When she wanted something, I didn't open it. My dad said, "We're not leaving." I sat on the kitchen floor and waited. After 10 minutes, Mark's car pulled in. I heard his door close. Voices firm, controlled, then quiet when Mark came inside. He leaned against the door and closed his eyes for a second. "They won't be back," he said. I made that clear. I believed him. 6 months in, life didn't feel good exactly. It felt stable, predictable, like a floor that didn't shift under you when you stepped. I had my own room now, a desk by the window. A plant Mark said I was responsible for it survived. I still thought about my parents, not with longing, more like checking a bruise to see if it still hurt. Sometimes it did, sometimes it did. One night, Mark knocked on my door and handed me his phone, a message from an unknown number. "I know you'll see this eventually. We miss you." Mark asked, "Want me to block it?" I said yes. He did it without ceremony. Later, sitting on my bed, I realized something. No one had raised their voice at me in months. No one had told me I was too much or not enough. I wasn't fixed, I wasn't healed, but I was safe, and that was new. 6 months passed. Life became quieter. Not empty, just quieter in a way that felt earned. The mornings settled into a rhythm. I woke up before my alarm most days, not because I had to, but because my body stopped bracing for something bad to happen. Mark left for work around 7. He always knocked once on my door and said, "I'm heading out," like I deserved to know. Sometimes he added, "Dinner's on you tonight," and that meant pasta or eggs or whatever I didn't burn. School got easier, not socially. I still ate lunch alone more often than not, but the work made sense again. I could focus long enough to finish assignments. My grades went from barely passing to solid B's, 1A in history. When the paper came back with a red MNIS at the top, my chest tightened for a second, waiting for the follow-up. The "you could have done better." It didn't come. I put the paper on the fridge anyway. Mark noticed later and said, "Nice work," and kept making coffee. Therapy stayed once a week. Same blue couch, same lamp. One day I mentioned that I felt guilty for being okay. My therapist nodded and said, "That's common when survival turns into stability." That sentence stuck with me. I worked more hours at the hardware store once. School let out. Nothing dramatic. Stocking shelves, helping people find screws they were already holding. The manager let me handle deliveries sometimes, trusted me with the clipboard. Trust still surprised me. My parents tried again around month 4. A letter this time. No return address, but I recognized my mom's handwriting immediately. Loopy, careful. I didn't open it. I left it on the counter until Mark got home. He didn't touch it, just asked, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Throw it away." He did. A week later, my sister sent a message from a new number. "I don't know why you're doing this. You're tearing the family apart." I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked the number without replying. The house stayed quiet. Afternoon, Mark came home earlier than usual. He had groceries and a look on his face like he'd been thinking too hard on the drive back. He said, "I ran into your dad today." My stomach dropped. Instinct kicked in. I waited for the rest. Mark went on. He asked how you were. I told him you were fine. He asked if you talked about them. And I said no, and that it wasn't my place. I nodded. That was it. Mark didn't dramatize it, didn't ask me how I felt. He just went to put groceries away. That was another thing I learned from him. Not every moment needed to be processed out loud. The only time he checked in directly was once, late one night, when we were both still awake. The TV was on, volume low. Some cooking show neither of us was watching. He said, "You know, you don't owe anyone reconciliation," I said. "I know." He said, "If that ever changes, it's your call." I said, "I know." And I did. Around month 5, my cousin sent me a message. Short, careful. I heard things got messy. Just wanted you to know, I hope you're okay. I replied, I am. Thanks. That was the extent of it. Life stayed small, intentionally. I liked it that way. The house felt lived in now. My room had posters. The plant was taller. Mark fixed the wobbly table leg, but left the folded napkin underneath anyway, like a reminder of how things had been. One night, I asked him why he stopped that night at the bus stop, why he didn't just mind his own business. He thought about it for a while, he said. I saw your dad turn away. That did it. I nodded. I didn't need more explanation than that. The 6-month mark came and went without ceremony. No countdown, no milestone speech, just a normal Tuesday. I came home from work tired. My hands smelled like metal and dust. Mark was already home, reading at the table. He looked up and said, "You eat." I said, "Not yet. There's leftovers." He said, "Help yourself." I heated food, sat down, ate. Halfway through, I realized something. I wasn't thinking about them, not my parents, not my sister, not the bus stop. The thought didn't scare me. It felt like relief. Later that night, I stood at the window in my room. The street was quiet, a few porch lights on, someone walking a dog, normal life happening. I thought about how hard I'd tried for so long to explain myself better, to be calmer, quieter, easier. None of that had saved me. What saved me was leaving. Being believed once, being protected once. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. I felt done. And for the first time, that felt like enough.